The massive chamber stretched out like a bowl made of stars. Ambassador Sarah Chen sat alone in her small section, looking up at thousands of alien representatives. Their voices filled the air with clicks, hums, and strange musical sounds. Each species had their own way of speaking, but the translation devices made everything clear in her earpiece. Sarah's hands rested on the smooth metal arms of her chair. She had been Earth's voice in this place for 3 years. Today felt different. Today something terrible was about to happen. The tall, crystal-like being at the center podium began to speak. Its voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. The Galactic Council will now discuss Resolution 4471 Gamma, it announced. This resolution concerns the planet Earth and its human population. Sarah's heart began to beat faster. No one had told her about this resolution. Earth had not been asked to prepare any statements. She pressed the communication button on her chair's arm, but nothing happened. The little red light that usually turned green stayed red. The Zephyrian representative stepped forward. It looked like a walking tree made of purple crystals. When it spoke, the crystals on its body glowed with each word. "Fellow beings of the galaxy," it said in its musical voice. "We have watched the humans for many cycles. We have studied their world, their behavior, their capabilities." Other aliens nodded their strange heads or made sounds of agreement. The insect-like Vraktar clicked their mandibles together. The floating gas creatures called aerials pulsed with soft light. "The humans," the Zephyrian continued, "are clearly designed by nature for physical work. Their bodies are strong but not too strong. They can work in many different environments. They learn quickly and follow orders well when properly directed." Sarah tried the communication button again, still red. She looked around the chamber and saw that some aliens were staring at her, not with curiosity or friendship. They looked at her the way someone might look at a useful tool in a store window. A new alien took the speaking platform. This one looked like a giant ant walking on 2 legs. Its voice buzzed through the speakers. "The Vraktar have also observed the humans," it said. "They work well in groups. They do not complain much about difficult conditions. Their lifespans are long enough to be useful but short enough that they do not become problematic." More agreeable sounds filled the chamber. Sarah felt sick to her stomach. They were talking about her people like they were animals, like they were things to be bought and sold. The floating jellyfish-like depth lords spoke next. Their voice sounded like water moving through pipes. "Our research shows that humans adapt well to different climates and situations. They can work underwater with simple breathing equipment. They can work in space with basic protective suits. They are very versatile." Sarah stood up and raised her hand. Several aliens turned to look at her, but the crystal being running the meeting did not acknowledge her. She pressed her communication button over and over. The red light never changed. "The economic analysis is also favorable," said a new voice. This came from the Koltar, aliens that looked like walking coins made of gold and silver. "Humans require only simple food, basic shelter, and minimal entertainment. The cost of maintaining them would be very low compared to their productivity output." The chamber filled with the sounds of alien approval. Clicking, humming, flashing lights, and musical tones all mixed together. Sarah realized that hundreds of different species were all agreeing with each other. They were all agreeing that her people should be slaves. "We have reviewed the human military capabilities," announced a new speaker. This one looked like a living shadow with glowing red eyes. "Their weapons are primitive. Their ships are slow and weak. Their defensive systems could not stop even a small galactic patrol fleet. There would be no significant resistance to acquisition operations." Sarah felt her face grow hot with anger. She stood up again and shouted, "I demand to speak." Her voice carried across the chamber without the translation system, but it sounded small and weak in the huge space. Some aliens looked at her with what might have been amusement. Others ignored her completely. The crystal being at the podium made a sound like breaking glass, which the translation system told her meant, "Irrelevant interruption noted." The voting began. One by one, species after species declared their support for Resolution 4471 Gamma. The Zephyrians voted yes. The Vraktar voted yes. The Depth Lords voted yes. The Koltar voted yes. The Shadow Beings voted yes. Sarah watched the voting display above the chamber. Numbers climbed higher and higher. 100 yes votes, 200 yes votes, 400 yes votes. Each yes vote meant that another species thought humans should be slaves. Each yes vote meant that another group of aliens saw her people as nothing more than useful tools. The voting continued for what felt like hours. Sarah sat in her chair and watched her people's freedom disappear with each new vote. She thought about her children back on Earth. She thought about her husband working in his laboratory. She thought about billions of humans who had no idea that their fate was being decided by creatures they had never met. Finally, only one species had not voted. The small furry creatures called Kalari whispered among themselves for a long time. Their representative, a being that looked like a cross between a cat and a monkey, approached the podium slowly. "The Kalari choose to abstain from this vote," it said in a high, squeaky voice. "We do not feel comfortable making decisions about another species' future without their input." The crystal being made another glass-breaking sound. Abstention noted. Final vote tally: 846 in favor, 0 opposed, 1 abstention. Resolution 4471 Gamma passes by overwhelming majority. The chamber exploded with alien celebration sounds. Sarah sat in her chair, frozen. It was over. Every species in the galaxy except one had just voted to enslave humanity. They had done it without letting her speak. They had done it without asking what humans wanted. They had treated her people like property to be divided up. But Sarah Chen had not been Earth's ambassador for 3 years without learning a few things. Her diplomatic pin, a small silver Earth symbol, contained more than just decoration. Hidden inside was a quantum communicator that could send messages instantly across any distance. She touched the pin gently and felt it warm up. She spoke very quietly, moving her lips as little as possible. "This is Ambassador Chen. Authorization code Phoenix 77 Delta. Execute Ragnarok protocol immediately. The vote is complete." They chose war. The message would reach Earth in seconds. It would reach the secret military bases on Mars in seconds. It would reach the hidden shipyards in the outer solar system in seconds. It would reach the generation ships that had been exploring the galaxy for decades in seconds. Sarah looked up at the celebrating aliens. They thought they had just acquired a useful slave species. They had no idea what they had actually done. They had just made the worst mistake in galactic history. She touched her pin again and sent one more message. "They want to see what humans can do when we're pushed. Show them all." Admiral Marcus Kane stood on the bridge of his ship and watched the Earth grow smaller behind them. The UES Retribution was moving away from humanity's home planet for the first time in its existence. For 30 years, the massive warship had hidden behind the moon, waiting for this day. "All stations report ready, Admiral," said his tactical officer, Commander Park. She looked calm, but Kane could see the fire in her eyes. Every human on this ship had been waiting for this moment. Every human in the fleet had been preparing for war since they were children. Kane activated the ship-wide communication system. "Attention, crew of the Retribution. Today, the galaxy learns who we really are. Today, we stop pretending to be weak. Today, we show them what happens when you threaten human freedom." The bridge crew cheered. These were not the same humans that the aliens had observed. These were the descendants of warriors, the children of survivors, the products of a world that had forged them in conflict for millions of years. The galaxy had made a terrible mistake. "Signal the fleet," Kane ordered. "All ships begin Phase 1 operations." Across human space, the real Earth revealed itself. On Mars, what the aliens thought were simple terraforming colonies opened up like flowers. Massive weapons emerged from underground bunkers. Factories that had pretended to make farming equipment began producing war machines. The Red Planet had been humanity's first military base, not their first colony. Dr. Elena Vasquez sat in her office deep beneath the Swiss mountains. Her screens showed reports coming in from across the solar system. Everything was going according to plan. The plan that humanity had been working on for over a century. "Ma'am," her assistant said, "we're receiving confirmation signals from all deep space assets. The generation ships are beginning their return journey." Elena smiled coldly. The galaxy thought those ships were exploring, looking for new homes for peaceful humans. They had no idea that each ship carried 50,000 trained soldiers and enough weapons to destroy entire star systems. They had no idea that those ships had been mapping alien worlds, studying alien weaknesses, preparing for this exact moment. "Excellent," Elena said. "Begin the information campaign. I want every species in the galaxy to know exactly what they voted for." The message went out on every frequency, in every language, to every corner of the galaxy. Elena herself delivered it, standing in front of cameras while wearing a simple Earth military uniform. "People of the galaxy," she began. 3 days ago, your representatives voted to enslave humanity. You decided that we were weak, primitive, and suitable only for manual labor. You made this decision without asking us. You made this decision without listening to us. You made this decision without understanding us. She paused and looked directly into the camera. You made a mistake. Humans are not weak. We are not primitive. We have been watching you, learning about you, preparing for you for over 100 years. We let you think we were harmless because it served our purposes. Now you will learn the truth. The message continued with detailed technical specifications of human military capabilities, weapon systems that turned matter into energy, ships that could travel faster than anything the aliens had ever built, soldiers who had been training for war since birth. It was a declaration that would terrify every species that had voted for human enslavement. Captain Liu Jiang received his orders while his ship orbited Jupiter. The massive vessel looked like a simple cargo hauler to any alien observers. Inside, it carried enough firepower to crack a planet in half. Set course for the Vraktar home system, he told his navigation officer. Time to show the bugs what humans think of their vote. His crew prepared for battle with calm efficiency. They had trained for this their entire lives. Every simulation, every drill, every exercise had prepared them for the moment when humanity would have to fight for its survival. That moment had arrived. The aliens had studied humans, but they had only seen what humans wanted them to see. They had observed human colonies and seen farmers and miners. They had watched human ships and seen slow cargo vessels. They had listened to human communications and heard peaceful scientific discussions. They had never seen a human military base. They had never seen a human warship. They had never seen humans prepare for war. If they had, they never would have voted for enslavement. They would have run. On Earth, President Martinez addressed the planet from the United Nations building. Behind her, the flags of every human nation flew together. For the first time in centuries, humanity was completely united. My fellow humans, she said, the galaxy has declared war on us. They believe we are weak. They believe we are defenseless. They believe we will submit to slavery without resistance. They are about to learn how wrong they are. The broadcast showed images from across the solar system, massive shipyards that had been hidden in asteroid belts, military academies on the moons of Saturn where children learned strategy and tactics, research facilities where scientists had developed weapons that could rewrite the laws of physics. For generations, we have prepared for this day, President Martinez continued. We knew that someday someone would try to conquer us. We knew that someday we would have to fight for our freedom. That day has come, and we are ready. The first human fleet departed from Earth 3 hours after the vote. 200 ships that looked like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. They moved faster than light itself, using technology that humanity had kept secret for decades. Their destination, the Zephyrian homeworld. The Zephyrians had spoken first at the vote. They had been the most enthusiastic about human slavery. They would be the first to pay the price. Admiral Kane watched the stars change as his ship entered hyperspace. In 12 hours, they would arrive at Prism 7. In 13 hours, the Zephyrians would understand their mistake. In 14 hours, the galaxy would see what happened to species that threatened human freedom. Admiral, Commander Park said. Incoming message from Earth Command. Kane activated the communication system. Admiral Chen appeared on the screen. Not Ambassador Chen, but her sister, Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Force. Marcus, she said, you have permission to show the galaxy what humans are capable of. No restrictions, no limits. Make them understand that we are not their slaves. We are their nightmare. Kane nodded grimly. Understood, Admiral. The Zephyrians wanted to see human labor. We'll show them human warfare instead. The fleet continued toward its target, carrying with it the hopes and fury of an entire species. Humanity had been peaceful by choice, not by nature. The galaxy was about to learn the difference. The Zephyrian homeworld of Prism 7 had stood for 10,000 years. Its crystal cities reached toward the stars like frozen music, each building a work of art that had taken centuries to grow. The purple light of their sun shone through the crystal structures, creating rainbows that danced across the planet's surface. Elder Zarthul stood at the top of the highest spire, looking out over the capital city. The crystalline being felt content. The vote had gone well. Soon the humans would be working for the betterment of all galactic species. It was the natural order of things. The first sign of trouble came from the orbital monitoring stations. Strange ships had appeared at the edge of the system. ships that moved too fast and looked like nothing in any database. The stations tried to send warning signals, but the signals never reached the planet. The strange ships had somehow cut off all communications. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of the Retribution as it approached Prism 7th. The planet was beautiful, he had to admit. The crystal cities were works of art. In a few hours, they would be dust. All ships assume attack formation, he ordered. Begin Phase 1 operations. The human fleet spread out around the planet like a net. Each ship aimed its weapons at a different target. Cities, military bases, communication centers, and industrial facilities. Nothing would be spared. Kane opened a communication channel to the planet's surface. His message would reach every Zephyrian on the world. People of Prism 7, he said, I am Admiral Kane of the Human Defense Force. 3 days ago, your representative voted to enslave my species. Your elder spoke of humans as if we were tools to be used. Today you will learn what those tools can do when they fight back. He paused, looking down at the beautiful world below. You have 30 minutes to evacuate your cities. Anyone who remains will be considered a military target. This is your only warning. Elder Zarthul received the message with confusion rather than fear. Humans fighting back? It was impossible. The data clearly showed that humans were weak, primitive, defenseless. This had to be some kind of mistake. The Elder tried to contact the orbital defense platforms, but there was no response. The communication networks were completely dead. Even the emergency systems weren't working. Somehow the humans had cut off the entire planet. 29 minutes later, the human attack began. The weapons that struck Prism 7th were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They didn't explode like normal bombs. Instead, they simply erased whatever they touched. The molecular bonds that held matter together were broken down, turning solid crystal into floating atoms. The beautiful spire cities of the Zephyrians crumbled like sand castles. Buildings that had stood for millennia vanished in seconds. The crystal beings watched in horror as their entire civilization dissolved before their eyes. But the physical destruction was only the beginning. The humans had studied Zephyrian psychology for decades. They knew that the crystal beings valued their art and culture above everything else. They knew that destroying the cities would break their spirits as much as their bodies. Elder Zarthul felt something he had never experienced before. Terror. The human ships moved through the atmosphere like ghosts, erasing everything they touched. The great libraries where Zephyrian knowledge had been stored for centuries were gone. The art galleries that had displayed their greatest masterpieces were empty space. The concert halls where their music had played for generations were silent forever. In 6 hours, the attack was over. Prism the 7th still existed as a planet, but Zephyrian civilization was gone. The survivors huddled in underground shelters, trying to understand what had happened. Their beautiful world had become a graveyard, but the humans weren't finished. As the fleet prepared to leave, Admiral Kane sent one final message to the survivors. This is what happens when you vote to enslave humanity, he said. Remember this day, remember what your elders' words cost you, and know that this is only the beginning. While the Zephyrians mourned their losses, Captain Liu Zhang was approaching the Vraktar home system. The insect-like beings had been enthusiastic supporters of human slavery. They would learn a different lesson than the Zephyrians had. The Vraktar were a hive mind species. Each individual was connected to the others through biological communication networks. They thought as one, acted as one, and made decisions as one. It was their greatest strength. Captain Zhang intended to make it their greatest weakness. Instead of attacking their cities, Zhang's ships targeted something more subtle: the communication nodes that connected the different hives. Using weapons that generated specific electromagnetic frequencies, the humans began to interfere with Vraktar mental networks. Queen Vaktel felt the first disruption as a slight buzzing in her mind. The connection to her worker drones flickered for a moment, then returned to normal. She dismissed it as unimportant. The hive mind had experienced minor glitches before, but the buzzing grew stronger. Soon she was receiving contradictory signals from different parts of her hive. Some drones reported human ships attacking the northern cities. Others reported the same ships attacking the southern continent. Still others insisted that there were no human ships at all. Within hours, chaos had spread through the entire Vraktar communication network. Each hive began receiving false information about the others. Queen Vaktel's hive received reports that Queen Zarnel's hive had betrayed them to the humans. Queen Zarnel's hive received similar reports about Queen Vaktel. The humans watched from orbit as the Vraktar civilization tore itself apart. Hive fought against Hive, each believing that the others had been compromised. The insect beings' greatest strength had become their greatest vulnerability. Their unity had been turned into paranoia and mistrust. Dr. Sarah Kim observed the operation from the command ship. She had spent years studying Vraktar psychology and biology. She knew exactly how to make them destroy themselves. Phase 2 complete, she reported to Captain Zhang. The Vraktar hives are now in open warfare with each other. Estimated time until complete societal collapse, 72 hours. Zhang nodded. Excellent work, Doctor. The insects wanted to use human labor to build their empire. Instead, they'll spend the next century trying to rebuild their own civilization. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, the Koltar were discovering that their economic power meant nothing against human hackers. The golden coin-like beings had built their civilization on trade and finance. They controlled the galaxy's banking systems, shipping networks, and commercial databases. Commander Maria Santos led the cyber warfare division from a ship hidden in an asteroid field. Her team had spent years infiltrating Koltar computer systems, learning their security protocols and mapping their networks. Now all that preparation was paying off. Initiate financial assault protocol, she ordered. Transfer all Koltar assets to human accounts. Crash their stock markets. Delete their trade agreements. Make them bankrupt. The attack was invisible but devastating. In a matter of hours, the Koltar went from being the wealthiest species in the galaxy to owning nothing. Their carefully built economic empire vanished like smoke. Bank accounts were emptied. Trade routes were redirected to human worlds. Corporate databases were wiped clean. Executive Kolmath stared at his financial displays in disbelief. Every number showed zero. Every account was empty. Every contract had been transferred to human ownership. The Koltar had lost everything without a single shot being fired. But the humans weren't stealing the wealth for themselves. They were giving it away to the species that had abstained from the slavery vote or had been too small to participate. The message was clear. Those who supported human freedom would be rewarded. Those who voted for human slavery would lose everything. News of the attack spread quickly through the galaxy. The Zephyrians were gone. The Vraktar were destroying themselves. The Koltar were bankrupt. And the humans were just getting started. Species that had voted enthusiastically for human slavery began to reconsider their positions. Emergency sessions were called in government buildings across the galaxy. Military leaders dusted off defense plans that hadn't been used in centuries. The galaxy was waking up to a terrifying new reality. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was not primitive. Humanity was not defenseless. The species that had voted to enslave them had made the worst mistake in galactic history. And the humans were just beginning to show them the consequences of that mistake. The emergency meeting of the remaining galactic leaders took place on a hidden space station in neutral territory. Representatives from dozens of species gathered in a conference room that had been built for trade negotiations, not crisis management. The mood was one of barely controlled panic. Chancellor Vexhai of the Kalari sat at the head of the table, one of the few beings present who could speak without fear. Her species had abstained from the slavery vote, and the humans had made it clear that neutrals would be protected. She looked around at the frightened faces of beings who had thought themselves masters of the galaxy just weeks ago. The humans have destroyed or crippled 47 major civilizations in the past month, she announced to the group. Their attacks are becoming more sophisticated and more personal. They are not just destroying our military forces. They are erasing our cultures. Supreme Commander Gorth of the Battleborn, a warrior species that looked like walking tanks made of metal and stone, slammed his massive fist on the table. This is impossible. Our data showed that humans were weak. How could we have been so wrong? General Flux 97 of the energy-based collective flickered with agitation. Our intelligence networks have been completely compromised. The humans knew everything about us while we knew nothing about them. This was planned for decades. The truth was slowly becoming clear to the assembled leaders. Humanity had never been the primitive species they appeared to be. Every piece of data the galaxy had gathered about Earth had been carefully manufactured. Every observation had been controlled. Every conclusion had been exactly what humans wanted them to reach. Ambassador Hithatar of the Aquatic Depth Lords spoke with a voice like rushing water. My homeworld of Oceania Deep was attacked yesterday. The humans did not destroy our cities. They boiled our oceans. 12 billion of my people died in minutes as their homes became steam. The room fell silent. The Depth Lords were one of the oldest and most respected species in the galaxy. Their underwater cities had been considered impregnable. If the humans could destroy them so easily, no one was safe. The pattern is clear, Chancellor Vexhai continued. The humans are not fighting a conventional war. They are conducting systematic revenge. Each species that voted for slavery is being destroyed in a way that specifically targets their culture, their psychology, their greatest fears. She activated a holographic display showing the galaxy. Red dots marked the locations of destroyed civilizations. Yellow dots showed species currently under attack. The number of red dots was growing every day. Captain Zhang's fleet had moved on to the gas giant dwellers called the Ariels. These balloon-like creatures lived in floating cities high in the atmospheres of gas giant planets. They had voted for human slavery because they thought atmospheric warfare was impossible for ground-based species. The humans proved them wrong in the most devastating way possible. Zhang's ships arrived at Nimbus Prime and immediately deployed gravity manipulation weapons. These devices, developed in secret research facilities throughout the outer solar system, could create localized gravity fields strong enough to affect entire cities. The aerial city of Skyhaven had floated in the upper atmosphere of Nimbus Prime for 3,000 years. It was home to 50 million beings who had never touched solid ground. The city was a marvel of engineering, held aloft by a combination of natural buoyancy and artificial gravity fields. Zhang's weapons disrupted those gravity fields with surgical precision. City leader, Erthon felt the first tremor as a slight shift in the usual atmospheric currents. The sensation was unusual but not alarming. Skyhaven had weathered countless storms over the millennia. But this was different. The gravity underneath the city began to increase, slowly at first, then faster and faster. The Ariels, who had evolved to float naturally in gas giant atmospheres, found themselves becoming heavy. Their balloon-like bodies began to compress under the artificial gravity. Skyhaven started to fall. The city's emergency systems activated, trying to compensate for the gravitational anomaly. But the human weapons were too sophisticated. Every attempt to restore normal gravity was countered by another adjustment from the human ships. 50 million Ariels died as their city plummeted through the layers of Nimbus Prime's atmosphere. They had time to understand what was happening to them. Time to realize that the humans they had voted to enslave were killing them with technology they didn't even understand. Other cities throughout the aerial home system suffered the same fate. Within a day, an entire civilization had fallen from the sky. Dr. Elena Vasquez watched the reports from her command center beneath Earth. Each attack was being carefully documented, not just for military purposes but for historical record. Future generations needed to understand what had happened here. They needed to know the price of threatening human freedom. "Ma'am," her aide reported, "we're receiving surrender offers from 17 species. They're requesting immediate ceasefire and offering full reparations." Elena looked at the list of species trying to surrender. All of them had voted enthusiastically for human slavery. Many had made speeches about how useful humans would be as workers. "Denied," she said simply. "All surrender offers are denied. They made their choice when they voted. Now they live with the consequences." The aide looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, some of these species are offering to surrender unconditionally. They're willing to accept human rule." Elena's expression grew cold. "We're not interested in ruling them. We're interested in making sure they never threaten anyone's freedom again. Continue the operations." Meanwhile, the energy-based Flux Collective was discovering that their incorporeal nature offered no protection against human ingenuity. The collective existed as pure energy, moving through space without physical bodies. They had thought themselves immune to conventional weapons. Commander Santos had developed a different approach for them. Her ships began deploying null field generators throughout collective territory. These devices created zones where energy could not exist in organized patterns. They turned space itself into a weapon against energy-based life. The collective beings found themselves dissolving as they entered the null fields. Their carefully organized energy patterns scattered and dispersed. Individual members of the collective simply ceased to exist. Their consciousness scattered to the cosmic background radiation. Flux Prime Alpha, the leader of the collective, tried desperately to find safe routes through human territory. But the null fields were everywhere, creating a maze of death for energy beings. The collective had voted to enslave humans because they thought physical beings were inferior. Now they were learning that physical beings could create weapons that energy beings couldn't even comprehend. Back on Earth, President Martinez addressed the planet once again. Behind her, the screen showed the ongoing military operations across the galaxy. "My fellow humans," she said, "the galaxy is learning that freedom is not free. Every species that voted to enslave us is paying the price for that decision. We did not choose this war, but we will finish it." The broadcast showed footage from the latest battles. Human ships moved through space like ghosts, striking targets with weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Ground forces landed on alien worlds and conquered them with technology that the defenders couldn't understand. "Some people ask me if we're going too far," President Martinez continued. "They ask if the punishment fits the crime. To those people, I say this: slavery is not a crime against property. It is a crime against the soul. Every being that voted to enslave us voted to destroy what makes us human. They deserve everything they're getting." The president paused and looked directly into the camera. "And we're not finished yet." Admiral Kane's fleet had moved on to the next target. The crystalline beings called the Structured had voted for human slavery because they believed organic life was inherently chaotic and needed silicon-based guidance. They were about to learn what human chaos could accomplish when properly focused. The Structured lived on worlds where everything was perfectly organized. Their cities were geometric marvels where every building, every street, every park followed mathematical principles. They found the disorder of organic life to be disturbing and offensive. Kane's ships began their attack by introducing randomness into the Structured cities. They used weapons that altered atomic structures in unpredictable ways. Streets began to curve where they should have been straight. Buildings started growing at odd angles. The perfect geometry of structured civilization became a nightmare of chaos and disorder. The Structured beings, who had spent millennia creating perfect order, watched their world become a maze of unpredictability. Their mathematical minds couldn't process the chaos. Many simply shut down from the psychological trauma of seeing their perfect world become random and wild. The message was clear to anyone watching. Humans could destroy with precision or with chaos, with technology or with psychology, with overwhelming force or subtle manipulation. They had become the galaxy's worst nightmare, and they were just getting started. Species that had not yet been attacked began to panic. Some tried to flee to distant galaxies. Others attempted to hide on isolated worlds. A few even tried to negotiate secret deals with the humans, offering information about other species in exchange for protection. 3 years after the vote, Ambassador Sarah Chen walked through the halls of the Galactic Council chambers. The same halls where she had once sat alone, denied the right to speak, watching as the galaxy voted to enslave her people. Now her footsteps echoed in empty corridors where thousands of alien representatives had once gathered. The great chamber itself was dark and silent. Most of the seats were empty now. Of the 846 species that had voted for human slavery, fewer than 200 still existed as organized civilizations. The rest were scattered refugees, broken remnants hiding on distant worlds or simply gone forever. Sarah wore a new uniform now. Not the simple diplomatic clothing she had worn during the vote, but the dark blue and silver of the human colonial authority. Her new title was Governor General of the Galactic Territories. It was not a title she had wanted, but it was one she had earned. Chancellor Vexhai of the Kalari met her at the center of the chamber, where the voting podium still stood. The small furry being looked older than before, worn down by 3 years of trying to maintain peace in a galaxy that had torn itself apart. "Governor Chen," Vexhai said with a slight bow. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting." Sarah nodded. "Chancellor, I hope this will be productive. The galaxy needs stability, even if it's not the stability anyone expected." They walked together toward the observation deck that looked out over the nebula surrounding the station. Stars twinkled in the distance, but many of them now shone down on human colonies instead of the alien civilizations that had once called them home. "The last of the Meridian Empire surrendered yesterday," Vexhai reported. "Their homeworld is now under human administration. That makes it official. Every species that voted for Resolution 471 Gamma has either been destroyed or placed under human governance." Sarah, looked out at the stars and felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. It didn't have to be this way. All they had to do was treat us as equals. All they had to do was respect our freedom. I know, Vexai said quietly, but they didn't, and now we live with the consequences. The consequences were visible everywhere. Human ships patrolled space lanes that had once been controlled by ancient empires. Human colonies grew on worlds that had been alien for millions of years. Human laws governed species that had never imagined being ruled by anyone else. But the humans were not the same as the aliens who had come before. They did not rule through fear or oppression. Instead, they governed with the same efficiency they had shown in war. Former enemies who submitted to human authority found themselves protected and provided for. Their basic needs were met, their cultures preserved, their people safe. It was not freedom, but it was not slavery either. It was something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. Dr. Elena Vasquez arrived at the station later that day. She had come to deliver the final reports on the military operations that had reshaped galactic civilization. As the head of human strategic intelligence, she had coordinated much of the war effort from her underground command centers on Earth. The last resistance pocket was eliminated 6 days ago, she reported to the assembled human leadership. The hive worlds of Sector 7 finally surrendered after their queen was captured. All major military threats to human security have been neutralized. Admiral Kane, promoted to Supreme Commander of Human Forces, reviewed the final casualty reports. Total human military losses, 47,000 personnel. Total alien military and civilian casualties estimated at 2.8 trillion beings. The ratio speaks for itself. The numbers were staggering, but they told the story of what happened when a species that had evolved to be apex predators decided to go to war. Humans had not just defeated their enemies, they had erased them with frightening efficiency. President Martinez, now serving as the first human galactic administrator, looked around the room at her advisors and generals. "The war is over," she announced. "Now we have to decide what comes next." That was the question that would define the future of galactic civilization. Humanity had won the war, but what kind of peace would they create? Some humans wanted to establish a harsh imperial system, ruling the galaxy through force and fear. Others preferred a more benevolent approach, governing former enemies with fairness and justice. Sarah Chen had her own ideas about the future. As she stood on the observation deck of the council station, she thought about the message she would send to Earth, to the human colonies, and to the surviving alien species. "This is Governor General Chen," she began, activating the Galactic Communication Network. 3 years ago, 846 species voted to enslave humanity. They saw us as weak, primitive, suitable only for manual labor. They were wrong. Her words were transmitted to every corner of the galaxy, reaching human colonies, alien refugee camps, and the few remaining independent worlds. Today, the war is officially over. Every species that voted for our enslavement has been defeated. Some have been destroyed, others have been conquered. All have learned the same lesson. Freedom is not something you can take from humans. It is something we will die to protect and kill to preserve. She paused, looking out at the stars that now belonged to humanity. To the surviving alien species, I offer this choice: live in peace under human protection, or face the same fate as those who came before you. We did not seek this war, but we finished it. We did not want to rule the galaxy, but we will do so rather than see anyone threaten human freedom again. The message continued with practical details about the new galactic government, the rights and responsibilities of alien subjects, and the laws that would govern the new order. But the important part was the warning embedded in every word. This could happen again. To anyone who forgot the lesson of the vote, months later, Sarah walked through the gardens of New Geneva, the human capital that had been built on what was once the Zephyrian homeworld. The crystal cities were long gone, replaced by more practical human architecture. But gardens had been planted where the alien spires once stood, and human children played where crystalline beings had once composed their musical art. She met with Dr. Vasquez beside a fountain that had been built from the rubble of a Zephyrian concert hall. The water reflected the light of the local sun, creating rainbows that were beautiful in their own way, even if they were different from what had come before. "Do you ever regret it?" Elena asked. "The destruction, the casualties, the way we changed everything?" Sarah considered the question carefully. She thought about the vote, About sitting alone in that vast chamber while aliens decided the fate of her species. She thought about the war that followed, about the civilizations that had been erased, about the new order that had emerged from the ashes. No, she said finally. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that they forced us to become what we became. But I don't regret protecting human freedom. I don't regret showing the galaxy that some things are worth fighting for. Elena nodded. The historical records will show that we gave them every chance to choose differently. We tried diplomacy first. We only turned to war when they voted to enslave us. And the records will also show what happens to species that threaten human freedom, Sarah added. Future generations will read about the vote of 2387, and they'll understand the consequences of that choice. As they walked through the gardens, human children ran past them, playing games and laughing in the afternoon sunlight. These children would grow up in a galaxy where human freedom was unquestioned, where no alien species would dare to vote for human enslavement, where the lesson of the war had been learned by everyone. The galaxy was quieter now. Fewer voices spoke in the council chambers. Fewer ships traveled the trade routes. Fewer civilizations reached for the stars. But those who remained did so with the knowledge that freedom was not free, that some species would fight to the death to protect what they valued most, and that humanity was not a species to be underestimated. In the end, the aliens had gotten exactly what they voted for. They had wanted to see what humans could do when put to work. The galaxy had seen what humans could do when put to war instead. The lesson would not be forgotten.